The day we were packing my late daughter's things, my son-in-law pushed me so hard that I hit the sideboard and heard a sharp, crunching sound. A tooth rolled down the wood like a seed, shiny and small. He stood over the boxes marked Emma, keep, breathing with anticipation. "I told you I'd get the jewelry now," he repeated, as if I were deaf and not grieving. "These are Emma's," I told him, covering my mouth with one hand, the box with her velvet cases with the other. My granddaughter was in the hallway, counting the hangers, whispering the numbers like a spell. The house smelled of dust and the lavender sachets Emma had stuffed into every drawer. The afternoon sun shone on his wedding ring, the one Emma had saved 2 paychecks for. "She's gone," he said, his voice clipped. "This should go to Lily and pay off the debts." "You wouldn't understand." He reached out again, and I clutched the box closer to my chest, feeling the folds of tape under my fingers. We'd buried her. 3 weeks ago, the pot still loomed on the countertop like a wall we no longer needed. "It's not up to you to decide what her mother keeps," I said. My words flew through the dull space where the tooth used to be. He laughed mirthlessly. "I'm her husband," he said. "You're ruining everything." "You already have," I said. His hand shot out. I didn't even notice him pushing me. Just the sudden tilt of the room, the thud of wood against my shoulder, the taste of iron. I leaned against the sideboard Emma had restored last spring, the one she'd called her salvation. He looked at me, then down the hallway, where Lily's whispers had faded. How could a man who ate at my table every Sunday knock out my tooth to steal my dead daughter's jewelry? I asked quietly, not for his benefit, but for the silence. He turned his head, moving his jaw, and for a moment I saw the boy he'd been before the late nights and the secret bills. I set the box down on the table and sat up straight. "You need to go. I said. He opened his mouth to bark back, but then noticed the tiny light on the door camera Emma had insisted on installing last winter after a break-in on our block. He looked away too quickly. He didn't know about the envelope in my purse, the inventory, the photographs, the will naming me as executor, or about my conversation with the lawyer the night before who'd told me exactly what kind of verdict the police would care about. "Go home," I told him, soft as a lullaby. "We're done for today." He hesitated, then grabbed his coat. The door slammed harder than necessary. Somewhere down the hall, Lily began counting again. The day Emma brought him home, he wore the kind of grin that makes mothers suspicious. Too polished, too quick to remember names. His handshake swallowed mine, and he complimented my roast chicken like a man who'd read 3 articles on how to impress a future mother-in-law. He brought Lily's, he noticed my old photographs. He fixed the crooked kitchen chair with a twist of a coin. "Mark," he said. "I'm handy. Comes in useful." My daughter rolled her eyes at me behind his back, a little defiant, a little in love. They married at the courthouse in a storm. He kissed her breathless in the lobby while the clerk stapled their license. After that came dinners I didn't host, a car I didn't recognize, a laugh from Emma I didn't love, the laugh people make when they're careful. When Lily was born, the careful laugh faded for a while. I cooked, I rocked my granddaughter on my chest, Mark installed the baby gate and complained about the cost. "It's all bleeding money," he'd say, and then glance at Emma as if she'd done it to him on purpose. Small things started to go missing. A silver pin my mother wore to church, the pearl earrings I'd given Emma on her graduation. "Probably at the bottom of a makeup bag," Mark said. "Women lose little things." Emma let out that careful laugh again, eyes soft but tired. She worked 2 part-time jobs and kept a ledger on the fridge in tidy pencil lines. He consulted, which meant there was always a deal arriving in 3 weeks that never did. The night Emma died, the voice that called me was almost calm. "It's me," Mark said. "I'm at county, so there was an accident." He told it like a traffic report. A truck drifted, Emma swerved, the airbag deployed, she was gone before any of us finished saying her name. He cried once, hard, shoulders shaking, and then dried his face. He moved through the funeral like a man collecting signatures. He wanted quick decisions. He wanted to simplify. I let grief fog me for a week, and then the fog cleared enough for the edges of things to show. On the 8th morning, I found an envelope on my porch with no return address, just my name in my daughter's handwriting. Inside were photographs: Emma's wrist with a yellowing bruise shaped like fingers, a close-up of a pawn ticket with the date circled, my pearl earrings lying behind glass on a tray with a white tag, Lot 27. The last photo was of the small sideboard she'd rescued from a yard sale, the one now in my dining room. She'd written one word on the back: keep. I sat at the table and breathed like a swimmer, in through my nose, out slow. I called the number of the attorney my neighbor had used when her husband passed, Ms. Rios, who wore steel gray hair like armor and listened without interrupting. I brought her the envelope. I brought my copy of Emma's will, naming me executor because she was not organized. She'd laughed, and I liked lists. I brought the ledger from the fridge that I had asked Lily to slip into her backpack while I kept Mark talking about coffee. I showed Miss Rios the photographs. I told her about the tooth. "We'll do two things," Ms. Rios said. "First, we protect you. Second, we protect the estate," she typed while she spoke, a click-click that steadied me. "Emergency protective order for the assault. Simultaneous notice to the bank to freeze joint accounts pending probate. Inventory of assets, including jewelry with dates and approximate values." And I'm going to give you a sentence to memorize. "As executor, I require written requests and will not release property without court approval." You will say it like a weather report. I bought a small digital recorder and slipped it into the blue sugar jar Emma had given me for Mother's Day. I called a locksmith, a kind man named Tom who had known my husband and still sets fishing lures on his dashboard. He replaced my locks and installed sensors on the windows. "Night mode is easy," he said, showing me the keypad. "Press this and sleep tight." He paused. "You want me to put a camera on the porch?" I nodded. He did it for free. Mark came by 3 times in that first week with a look of driven patience, like he was late for an appointment and I was the only thing slowing the clock. The third time, he brought a folded list. "Jewelry, handbags, electronics," he read. "They're part of Emma's estate, which is my household. We can't have you sorting things without me. That's not, transparent." "As executor," I said, steady, "I require written requests and will not release property without court approval." He smiled like a guidance counselor. "You're confused, Carol. The law..." "Put it in writing," I repeated. He left, and within the hour, my phone pinged 4 times. Emails. The subject lines were polite. His words were not. I forwarded every one to Miss Rios. "Good," she replied. "This helps." She added a note. "The pawn ticket dates matter. We'll ask the shop to hold anything marked with your daughter's name." I went to the dining room and ran my fingers along the underside of the sideboard Emma had fixed, finding the tiny dowel she'd carved to hold a loose panel. The wood gave with a soft sigh. Inside lay a velvet pouch, thick as a fist, and a memory card taped to an index card. On the card, in Emma's careful hand, "If I'm wrong, burn. If I'm right, use." I sat down and cried in a way that made the dog next door whine. Then I took 2 deep breaths, rinsed my face, and drove to Miss Rios. The card contained 11 short voice memos and a video recorded with the front camera of Emma's phone. In it, Emma was barefaced and fierce. "Mom," she said, "if you're seeing this, I messed up my timing." She laughed once, not careful. "Do you remember when you told me a woman is a house with steel beams and a painted porch? The beams hold it all. The paint fools strangers. I want you to know the beams are still here. I'm going to the pawn shop today to buy back your pearls. I have the ticket. Mark says he'll fix it, but I don't want him to fix anything anymore. He got very mad last night. It scared Lily. I told him I would not leverage my jewelry for his debts. He called me disloyal. Mom, if this is messy, I'm sorry. I'll clean it." She looked off camera. "Lily's up. I'll call you later." I didn't ever get that call, but I had the memos and the pawnbroker's name and Emma's list of what should be in the velvet pouch. It matched the envelope on my porch and the index of my own grief. Ms. Rios's paralegal scanned everything. "We're building a fence," Ms. Rios said. "He will try to climb. We will make it taller." I went to the dentist, who took x-rays and wrote down the words, "force trauma, tooth avulsion." I stopped by the clinic, where a nurse dabbed my shoulder and took photographs. "Document," she said as she clicked. "If he pushes once, he'll push again." That night, I called my granddaughter. We spoke in numbers, the language of her counting spells. "How many books did you read today?" I asked. "3," she said. "How many hugs do you want when I see you?" She giggled. 10. I swallowed pain. "Good," I said. 10 it is. 2 days later, the pawnbroker called Ms. Rios and me in. He was a careful man with a kind face. "I got a notice from the court," he told us, and I looked at my inventory. A man answered to the name Mark sold this lot in bits over 8 months. Most is gone. 2 items remain because they were misfiled. He set a tray on the counter, my mother's silver pin and Emma's wedding band, scuffed but brave. I paid for them in cash and asked him to photocopy every scrap of paper with my daughter's name. Mark tried a different angle. He brought Lily by without warning, holding a paper bag with a toy sticking out. "Thought we could all be a family, Sewell," he said, standing at my door like a salesman rehearsing sincerity. For Lily's sake, I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me so he couldn't see the recorder's light. "You hurt me in my own home," I said. "You've been removing property from the estate. I have asked you to leave me in peace. Do not come here without notice. Do not bring Lily here as leverage." His face changed, flicker, flash, back to smooth. "You going to keep the child from her only parent?" he said too loud. "Think anyone's going to like that?" "There are people who will make that decision," I said, "and it won't be you." I looked past him. "Hi, baby," I told Lily. 10 hugs soon." She lifted a hand quick. He moved her toward the car. "Old women forget," he said under his breath, almost pleasant. "It's biology." "My memory's fine, man," I said and watched him go. I filed the protective order. The judge signed it with a stroke that looked like a man slashing something from a list. The paper said Mark could not come within 100 yards of me or the house. It said he could not harass me by phone or email. It said violations would be a crime. He violated it 3 times in a week. First with a midnight call that cut off as soon as I said my name, then with a text, "You're making a mess," and then with a car idling at the corner for 20 minutes while the porch camera recorded the plate clearly. Tom the locksmith printed out the footage for me. "People forget cameras think in ink," he said, tapping the image. Ms. Rios filed each violation. "We're patient," she said. "The system is slow until it's sudden." Mark realized slow wasn't working. He switched to sudden. It was a Tuesday, pale light through the kitchen curtains. I was labeling Emma's cookware to give to a cousin when the back window popped like a knuckle. I pressed the night mode button without looking. The alarm's countdown began, a steady escalating beep. "Don't," I called out. "Go away." He stepped onto the linoleum with a half-embarrassed shrug. "You left me no choice," he said, eyes moving in quick scans. "Where is it?" "Where is what?" "The jewelry, Carol." "The safe." He jerked open a cabinet and found flour. He wrenched the sideboard drawer and found linens. He came to the velvet pouch lying in plain sight on the table. He grinned. "You're not subtle." "I'm not," I agreed. He grabbed the pouch and stuffed it into his jacket, just as the alarm finished counting down and began to scream. He froze, then moved again, wild. "I'll bring it back," he said, backing toward the door. "You'll be glad I did this." "I won't," I said. 2 minutes later, the front door burst inward with uniforms. Mark did a good performance of surprise, then indignation, then injured pride. It lasted until the officer read the protective order and the line about no contact and no presence. He went quiet then, hands behind his head. They cuffed him with an apology to me. "We're sorry for the disturbance, ma'am," one of them said over the alarm. The disturbance is welcome, I said. At the station, the officer asked for my statement. I used Miss Rios' sentences like rails. I am the executor. He entered without permission. He violated a protective order. He removed property that is part of the estate. I showed them the Ring camera footage, the earlier texts, the photographs of my tooth. They took it all. We'll send this to the district attorney, the officer said. It's clean. Mark bonded out by evening. He did not message me. He messaged everyone else. Carol's fragile, he wrote to family friends. This is grief. Please, don't engage her. The messages trickled back to me like rain through a leaky roof. I saved screenshots. I called Lily's school and asked to be added to the emergency pickup list. Her mother listed you already, the secretary said, voice kind. We wondered when you'd call. The next day, Ms. Rios received a notification from the bank. Someone had attempted to access Emma's closed account with a forged letter. It was scanned and perfectly legible. Even Mark's borrowed words kept their borrowed rhythm. We added it to the file. The prosecutor assigned to our case was a young woman with a calm voice. There's enough here for charges on the protective order and the break-in, she said. Grand larceny may depend on valuation. Do you have appraisals? In the sideboard, I said. She raised an eyebrow and smiled. Of course. We met 2 more times in the weeks that followed building the fence. Meanwhile, Ms. Rios filed for guardianship of Lily, not to sever bonds, but to give the court options if Mark was convicted. We don't take children like trophies, she said. We build a place for them to stand. The judge will see what he sees. Mark went quiet for a while. When men like him go quiet, they're digging. 2 Saturdays later, while I was watering the apple tree my husband and I had planted the year he came home from the service, my neighbor Tom waved from his porch. Delivery for you, he called. A man in a polo shirt wheeled a box to my door and held out a clipboard. The label said Estate Assessors. The sender line said nothing at all. I didn't sign. I smiled like a Sunday school teacher. I don't accept packages I didn't order, I said. The delivery man shrugged, bored, and wheeled it back to the truck. The next morning, I got an email from an address that looked like a typo. Mark accounts at protonmail. Refusing professional help makes you look obstinate, it read. Judges dislike obstinate. I forwarded it to Miss Rios. She replied with one word, good. What I didn't expect was the letter from the insurance company. We have received a claim for life insurance benefits on behalf of Mr. Mark Henderson, it read. As named beneficiary, he asserts urgency. I read it twice, then again. Emma and I had spoken about insurance on a rainy errand day. I'll list Lily, she said, buckling her seatbelt. If the forms make it complicated, I'll list you as guardian for Lily. Mark will understand. She'd smiled. He says insurance is pessimistic. I called the number on the letter and asked for the claims office. A woman answered with the practiced quiet of someone who had learned to speak softly so people would tell her the truth. I gave my name and Emma's. I'm the executor, I said. I have a copy of the policy. It names her child as beneficiary, with me as guardian, not her husband. I'm faxing you the documents now. There was a silence that felt like a held breath. Then the woman said, thank you. We flagged this for review. Please send the will as well. I did. 2 hours later, she emailed me. Claim under investigation. No funds disbursed. He had been counting on that money. When the insurance paused, the walls of his house began to creak. The next move was clumsy. He sent a man with a shaved head and a shirt with the word solutions over the pocket to my door. Mediation, the man said, trying to step past me. A neutral professional to resolve conflict. I blocked the doorway and smiled without showing my teeth. I have counsel, I said. If you represent a party, mail me. If you are truly neutral, go away. He went away. I sharpened my errands into a blade. I took Lily to school and stayed for pickup. I shopped for bananas and rice and toothpaste at a time I knew Mark was at work if he had work. I wore lipstick and my best coat to the courthouse. I let people see me unfrightened. I answered each of his little fires with water or witness. I told Lily stories about the apple tree, about her mother as a girl, about how sometimes the world feels too big, but it shrinks for you if you look it in the eye. Then came the day more sudden than the others. I had just come back from the dentist, tongue still numb, the new tooth in place like a white flag that claimed ground rather than surrendering it. Tom called. "You at home?" he asked. "I am." "You sitting down?" "I can be." "There's been an arrest," he said. He tried to sell a ring at the pawn shop down on Martin. The owner recognized it from the hold notice and hit the silent alarm. He's at county. They're calling it burglary and violation of order. And Carol, he was wearing a hoodie with your granddaughter's school logo on it. I thanked him and hung up. The numbness in my tongue made my thank you sound odd, but it didn't matter. I set the kettle on. It clicked. The house hummed around me. Old wood and new sensors and the particular dry light of early afternoon. Ms. Rios called 15 minutes later. "This helps," she said. "It's not everything, but it helps." "What would be everything?" I asked. "His pattern on paper," she said, "and something he can't explain away." I went back to the sideboard. I'd returned the panel after finding the velvet pouch and the card. I'd not listened to all the memos. I'd feared the last one. I queued them up now, one after the other, the little green line crawling like a patient insect. Emma's voice filled the room, laughing about Lily's spelling test, sad about a canceled dinner, steady when she described budgets. Then two memos that were different, short, breathless, recorded in a bathroom. "He took my debit card and called it a reallocation," she said in one. "He says married money is one pot." I said trust is not a pot. In the other, he pushed me tonight. Not hard, but Lily saw. He cried after and said it was stress. I told him if it happened again, I would tell you. I'm telling you like this in case I lose my nerve. The last file was a video, time-stamped 2 nights before she died. The camera was angled up from the sideboard surface, catching only forearms, midsections, the edge of a jaw. It was enough. Emma's voice, tight. "Don't pawn my grandmother's pin." Mark's voice, flat. "It's an asset." A scuffle, brief. A man's hand on a woman's wrist, squeezing. Emma pulled back, breath hitching. "You're hurting me," she said. His voice dropped to a whisper that a microphone somehow caught better than the room. "You'll do what a partner does," he said. "I won't be embarrassed." He let go and the camera jerked as if she had bumped it. The image froze on a frame of his hand, and the white half moon where his wedding ring pressed into his skin. Then the screen went black. I took the memory card to Miss Rios. She didn't comment while the paralegal copied it, only reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. "This," she said when it was done, "is what he can't explain away." The prosecutor filed an additional charge. Coercion. "It's not the hammer most people imagine," she said, "but it's a hammer." Mark pled not guilty to everything. He stood in court in a suit he hadn't earned and shook his head at the floor as if the building had disappointed him. His attorney was passable but underprepared. The judge looked like a man who had seen all of this before and was tired of it. He denied a motion to dismiss the protective order violations. He allowed our video. He scheduled a hearing for guardianship of Lily and told Mark to maintain school stability or face sanctions. Mark glanced back at me as the clerk announced dates, and for the first time in months, I saw confusion rather than calculation. Men who think women forget are shocked when we remember. The pawn shop owner testified, hands folded, voice steady. Tom, the locksmith, testified and held up printed stills from my door camera like a science teacher, pointing to a cloud formation. The nurse testified, the dentist did too, sounding embarrassed to be in a courtroom but precise about teeth and force and fracture. Ms. Rios asked her gentle, clear questions, and she answered. When it was my turn, I told the story from the beginning the way you sweep a floor, edge to center, small strokes so nothing scatters. Mark's attorney, Montagne, tried to make me sound vain and vengeful. Isn't it true, Mrs. Harper, that you dislike my client? That you've never approved of him? I let myself smile once, briefly. I dislike what he did to my daughter, I said. Disapproval is for table manners. He tried a different tack. You're 71, he said, pretending awe. Is it possible your memory conflates dates? That grief? My memory is written down, I said, and raised the ledger Emma had kept, the emails, the photographs. If I forget, the paper remembers. When the video played, the room changed. The echo of Emma's voice made even the judge sit forward. Mark stared at the screen as if the man in it were someone else, some inconvenient cousin who had borrowed his face. His jaw moved. He couldn't find a place to put his hands. After testimony ended, the judge spoke without looking at any of us. This court does not resolve grief, he said. It can only address conduct. He found Mark guilty on the protective order violations and the break-in, deferred sentencing until after a pre-sentence report, and referred the pawn shop matter to the grand jury for the larceny charge. He issued a temporary guardianship, granting me the right to make day-to-day decisions for Lily, with supervised visitation for Mark. Any attempt to intimidate or harass, he added, and I will revisit visitation. He signed papers while he spoke. His pen sounded like a metronome. Outside, the sky had the flat brightness of winter noon. Ms. Rios put her hand on my shoulder. Breathe, she said. I breathed. My knees felt like someone else's, but they held. It wasn't over. Men like Mark don't stop until they are stopped. 3 days later, he called from an unknown number and left a voice message he believed was safe. We can fix this, he said. I'll talk to the DA. You return what you stole from me. He meant the life he believed he was owed. He meant my daughter's things, her child, her story. I saved the message. I called the prosecutor. She added it to the file. We're almost there, she said. One more clean piece. Clean arrived from an unexpected place. Insurance called again. We have an affidavit from your daughter's employer confirming she changed her beneficiary 6 months before her death, the woman said. The claim filed by Mr. Henderson was falsified. We're referring it to the state fraud unit. Please expect a call. It came that afternoon. A man with a square voice asked me questions and spoke about statutes. Fraud is a separate track, he said. It moves slower, but it moves. He paused. Mrs. Harper, did your daughter ever mention coercion to change beneficiaries? Not to me, I said. To her camera. I told him about the video. He asked for a copy. I sent it. The DA's office proposed a plea. Mark would plead guilty to the protective order violations and the break-in, agree to restitution for the pawned items documented, and accept a suspended sentence with probation. If he violated, he would serve time. He would also agree to supervise visitation and to leave the estate under court oversight. Ms. Rios called me with the offer. We can go to trial and win louder, she said, but this guarantees consequences and protects Lily now. What do you want? I thought of Emma's voice on the video. I thought of Lily counting hangers in the hallway while I held my jaw and tasted iron. I thought of the apple tree, stubborn in winter, storing sweetness in its roots because it knew spring would come. I want safety, I said, and I want him to have a leash. We accepted. In court, he said, guilty, like the word hurt, his voice catching on the consonants. The judge read the conditions slowly, making a map. You will not contact Mrs. Harper directly or indirectly, he said. You will not remove, sell, or attempt to sell property from the estate. You will submit to financial counseling and to random checks by your probation officer. You will attend a program about coercion and control. If you fail any of this, you will serve the remainder of your sentence. Outside, I sat on the courthouse steps. The concrete was cold. Ms. Rios handed me a paper cup of coffee that tasted like sacrifice but felt like a gift. We're not done, she said. There will be paperwork and people who test boundaries. But you built the fence, I had help, I said. She squeezed my shoulder. You asked, she replied. That's the most important help of all. In the weeks that followed, I turned my attention to Lily like a sunflower turning to the warmest place. We made her room ours, a lamp shaped like a moon, a rug with a road printed on it for toy cars we don't own anymore, a corkboard for spelling words and drawings. She brought me a shoebox and asked if we could make it into a treasure chest. We lined it with the soft yellow scarf Emma wore on windy days and put inside it a feather, a pebble, a paper crown, and the silver pin, the real one this time. I told her it was from her great-grandmother, who wore it when she sang in church. "Will Mom see it?" she asked. Children ask the whole truth with the innocence of a prayer. "She would love it," I said. "She would love how careful you are with things." At night, after Lily fell asleep with her mouth slightly open and her hair fanned across the pillow in a way that made her look like both herself and someone I missed, I sat at the kitchen table with my ledger and wrote. I listed what had been lost and what had been found. I wrote down small victories, a teacher who emailed to say, "Lily laughed at recess," a neighbor who left a casserole with real butter, a tooth that didn't ache anymore. I wrote down what remained undone: the fraud investigation, the restitution to be calculated, the hearing in 6 months to reconsider guardianship. I wrote down the sentence Ms. Rios had given me, and underneath it, in my own handwriting, I wrote another. The beams hold. Mark kept to the leash for a while. Probation has a way of embarrassing men who don't like being told what to do. He came to the supervised visits on time and made a show of being cheerful. He brought puzzles and took photos of Lily, placing pieces like a magician, revealing nothing. Sometimes he looked at me across the room when he thought no one else was watching. I looked back until he glanced away. I didn't owe him fear. The fraud unit moved slower than grief. When they finally called with their decision, it was on a Tuesday again, as if the week had a favorite day to change lives. "We are charging Mr. Henderson with insurance fraud," the square-voiced man said. "We have evidence of a forged claim and of attempts to alter a beneficiary designation through intimidation. This will not touch your guardianship case directly, but the judge will be informed." He paused. I'm sorry for your loss." I thanked him. The words we use around loss are mostly inadequate, but the trying matters. The next hearing for guardianship felt less like war than like weather. We were all tired. The judge asked Lily's counselor for a report. The counselor, a woman with an open face and a spine you couldn't see but could feel, spoke softly. "Lily is thriving with her grandmother," she said. "She loves her father. She is frightened by anger. Stability is the best gift you can give her." The judge nodded. "Temporary guardianship continues," he said. "We will reconsider in a year, Basai." Mark's mouth pressed into a line I recognized. He had lost something he thought automatic. On the way home, Lily counted her steps on the courthouse stairs. 23, she announced at the bottom, proud. 23 until the sidewalk. "What should we do with 23, I asked. "Bake cookies," she said, as if I had asked a very different question. So we did. We made the house smell like vanilla and lemon and heat. We delivered a plate to Tom, who pretended to be surprised and shared 2 with the dog. We saved some for Miss Rios's office. We kept 4. We ate 2 and saved 2 for tomorrow, which is a way of believing tomorrow will come. The restitution hearing for the pawned items was dull and necessary. The pawnbroker's inventory and our photographs met in the middle to make a number. Mark's attorney quibbled. The judge split the difference as judges do. "Pay it," he said. "You have 12 months." Mark nodded like a man wearing a heavy hat. The last piece fell into place in an ordinary way. Insurance funds for Lily finally arrived, held in a trust Ms. Rios had set up so carefully I could hear the screws turning. I took Lily to the bank and let her hand the teller a blank check. "We don't touch this until you're grown," I told her, "but we can choose something small today to remember your mom." She chose a lamp for her desk that projects stars on the ceiling. That night, we lay on her rug and watched the room fill with indigo light and tiny white constellations. "Which one is Mom?" she asked. I pointed to a cluster near the lamp's edge. "The one that looks like a pin," I said. And she laughed, understanding, because she had learned me. Month by month, the noise faded. Mark kept the leash, not because he chose to, but because the fence held. He missed one supervised visit and blamed traffic. He showed up for the next with a new apology and old eyes. He learned to pay in small bills and watch people's faces when they said no. A man who has to ask permission after a lifetime of taking rarely becomes kinder. He becomes quiet. In that quiet, Lily grew. She learned to French braid her hair. She learned to answer the phone with, "Hello, this is Lily," because I told her the world listens when you take yourself seriously. On the anniversary of Emma's death, I took Lily to the apple tree. We hung ribbons on the lower branches and told 3 stories. One of when Emma dyed the tips of her hair purple and laughed at the mirror. One of when she fixed the sideboard and declared victory over splinters. One of when she called me from the grocery to ask whether lemons count as dessert if you put enough sugar on them. We ate apple slices dipped in cinnamon and said her name out loud like a key. Back inside, Lily did her homework and I washed the knife and the cutting board. The house was quiet, in the way houses are when they are keeping you. The porch camera light winked on and off as the evening deepened. Somewhere across town, Mark was likely thinking of next moves, then of the leash, then of the walls. The law would go on grinding, the probation calendar inching toward a date when someone would write compliant or violation in a box. My ledger would accept new lines, the fence would need paint. People ask what revenge looks like when you're a woman my age. They think it's a dramatic confession or a late-night confrontation or a gotcha in a crowded room. Sometimes it's that. More often, it looks like a stack of papers in a neat folder, a lawyer who knows which sentence matters, a camera you don't point at anyone unless you need to, a neighbor who knows your name, a child sleeping under starlight from a lamp you bought with money that was meant to feed someone else's habit. It looks like staying on your feet. It looks like a new tooth that fits. A week after the ribbons, I stopped by the pawnbroker's to bring him a batch of lemon bars, because courtesy is also a kind of counterattack. He smiled. "You know," he said, "well, we got a call when all this started from someone asking if we had a silver pin with a church on it." I told them we were holding it. They got real quiet and hung up. "Some people think value is only how much you can get," I said. "And some know it's who wore it," he replied. On my way home, I drove past the courthouse. The steps looked smaller, as if the building had shrunk to match the size of my fear. I glanced at myself in the rearview mirror. The face looking back was mine, lined and deliberate. My husband once told me I had the eyes of a woman who could take a hit and still write a grocery list. "It's a useful talent," he'd said, grinning. "Just don't let people make a hobby of testing it." I told Mark that with my actions. I told Lily the rest with my days. That night, Lily asked if I could teach her to make lemon frosting the way Emma did. "She swirled it," Lily said seriously, "not spread it. There were peaks," she added, as if describing mountains. We measured, we zested, we beat sugar into butter until it fell in folds like silk. We made peaks. We ate frosting straight from the whisk because life is short but also long if you do it right. We cut a slice and set it on the table between us. 10 hugs, she reminded me. We counted them, one by one, our arms a metronome against the door camera's patient light. When we finished, she laughed. 11, she said, adding one because she could. I looked at the apple tree in the window, holding its leaves like a secret. I looked at the sideboard, shining under the lamp. I looked at my granddaughter, bright and small, and then at the stack of papers on the counter, orders and letters and ledgers that looked to anyone else like bureaucracy. To me, they look like a life reclaimed. There are men who can push an old woman and think they're pushing down a wall. What they don't see is the beams, quiet steel under paint, holding. They don't hear the recorder in the sugar jar hum to life. They don't see the neighbor watch. They don't feel the judge's pen. They don't understand the arithmetic of a woman who adds and remembers the sum. They don't understand that grief doesn't make us yield. It makes us precise. I turned off the kitchen light and left the porch one on. I have always liked a house that says hello to the dark. In the morning, the lamp would project stars again, and Lily would tell me which was her mother and which was me. I would point and say, the one that looks like a pin, and she would laugh. The fence would stand and the apple tree would wait, and I would count out loud how many steps there were to the sidewalk until I reached the number that felt like an answer.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.